3. Lyr awoke not to Deirdre's prompting, but to some inner sense of warning. He peered over the lip of his cover, but Deirdre pulled him back down. Something was remiss. Something was wrong. It was the first hour of the day, and the pre-dawn light was growing. "What are you doing?" Deirdre hissed. "They are coming!" "How far away are they?" Lyr asked. "Within half a mile and nearing as we speak," Deirdre commented. "Our scouts saw theirs and retreated. They come with our kin lashed to a long rope." Lyr made to leave the position, but Deirdre stopped him. "This is the best place for you to be. Anywhere else you will give away our position," Deirdre said. Lyr growled. He could intuit that something was disastrously wrong with their ambush attempt, but he could not risk angering those who lay beside him. Instead, he waited in the dark and fought back the sensation that whispered in his mind that already they were doomed. A quarter of an hour passed, and he began to believe that perhaps it was just cowardice and doubt that haunted his thinking. Then the first Picts could be seen. Rather than advance far ahead of their captives, they marched directly in front of the slave train and along its sides. Lyr counted at least 200 of the painted men. A thick layer of bluish-gray paint decorated their faces and skin. "Woad," Lyr remarked. "They are wearing their woad." "They are Picts," said a woman next to Lyr. "Picts only don their woad when they are sure they are about to do battle. The paint wears off, and the euphoria it gives them goes away with it." Lyr blinked. He turned to Deirdre. "They already know we are—" A gout of flame and thunder erupted next to Lyr, and the woman beside him screamed in pain. The flames engulfed both her and the archer next to her, and some of the sticky, burning oil splattered on Lyr's shield. He had been informed by his uncle of what this quasi-magical gel was. The Aquilonians called it naphtha. The substance was difficult to work with and difficult to find, but it would burn even when water was used to douse it. The two women that were engulfed in the fire screamed and rolled in pain. They pleaded to uncaring Crom to aid them. The woman next to him tore at her eye sockets. The fire had melted not only her skin, but caused her eyeballs to boil. Lyr looked upon her in horror, unable to act. Down on the battlefield, near the hidden positions of the Cimmerians, came the growls of great hunting cats. They had crept upon the hidden men, and now bit and clawed at them. Some of the warriors were revealed to the Picts, who in turn hurled atlatl darts at them. Another burst of naphtha erupted near Rion, who managed to shelter behind his shield. Lyr looked to see how the Picts were delivering the hellish flames. He saw great birds circling above the battle. Their wingspans were easily as wide as a man was tall. "Mountain condors," he thought. "Mountain condors carrying glass or clay pots. The sorcerer sees us. It is my fault. It is all my fault." He was so stunned by the revelation that he did not act. He watched as Deirdre drove her smallsword into the two burning women to ease their pain. Then they were sheltering behind shields as darts fell about them. In the forest, other Cimmerians fled from serpents that had crept onto limbs above them to fall upon them from the trees. The battle had quickly lost all of its cohesion. If the Cimmerians did not do something quickly, they would all perish. "Rion, the line! Storm the line!" Lyr called. "The sorcerer dare not risk his magic near his own tribe." Truthfully, Lyr did not know if it was so. The sorcerer may not care a lick about his minions. Yet it seemed the only plan that could succeed. If they fled, the great cats would simply run them down, followed by Pictish hunters hungry for blood and scalps. The young chieftain heard him and barked the order. Soon the Cimmerians charged, the Picts from both sides. The charge of a mere 30 men should not have routed a force of 200. Yet many of the Picts were wounded heavily, and the captured Cimmerians stomped and attacked Picts near them. In the confusion, the armored Cimmerians had the advantage. In the initial rush, the Cimmerians felled nearly twice their own number amongst their Pictish foes. Animals pursuing the Cimmerians fell into the pit traps meant for men, as the lithe Cimmerians leapt across them in the assault. True to Lyr's seduction, the animals and serpents were reluctant to follow the attacking Cimmerians when they neared the Picts. In the thick of the battle, Rion and his two personal guards made a path towards the captives. Picts that would strike them from the side or behind were quickly dealt death from arrows fired by Deirdre and her remaining markswomen. Once there, Rion severed the rope that went through the rings that connected all the captives. Many of the captives had been stabbed by this time, but in the confusion the Picts could not slay them all. Soon the Picts found themselves battling Cimmerians both before and behind them. In such a battle, the Picts' lack of armor was a fatal detriment. Many Picts dropped to blows and strokes that, had they been armored, would not have dealt death. Yet they held the advantage of numbers. Slowly the Picts rallied around the forward part of their force. The Cimmerians, seeking their kin's rescue and escaped, forced a clear path back to Cimmeria, and safety migrated towards the rear of the battle. The Picts began to retreat, their animal allies stalking along beside them. Deirdre shouted, "We must go, before we are cut off!" She dragged Lyr along until he regained his wits. Beside them, the two Cimmerian warrior maids kept pace. They were more lightly laden than Deirdre and Lyr, and began to outpace them. They looked back to see if they should slow for the chieftainess. "Go!" she commanded them. But the archers disobeyed. They tried to take Deirdre's place, urging Lyr along, but she waved them away. One of the women stumbled as an atlatl dart impacted the shield she had slung over her back, but with grace she rolled back to her feet and barely lost her stride. Lyr did not need them to say what he was already aware. Without me, escape would be easy. Yet they ran beside him. They skirted alongside the southern edge of the battle and could see the Picts retreating in good order. Yet a pack of Picts, perhaps 7 or 8, chased the fleeing Cimmerians, who guarded their chieftainess. The Picts occasionally threw darts or javelins, but the women and Lyr managed to avoid them. However, the Cimmerians were tiring. The rapid force marched, and the labor in preparing the ambush had greatly worn on them. The Picts would surely catch them. Lyr glanced around desperately for something to save them. He espied it a moment later. "Make for that rise!" he called to the women. To their left, and towards where their kinsmen battled, there was a steep outcropping of rock. Perhaps once a stream had cut it sheer, but now it towered some 50 feet over the ground. Picts had the advantages over Cimmerians of woodcraft, but in climbing none surpassed the children of Crom. The women immediately saw Lyr's plan. They could scale the rock as nimble as goats, and rain arrows and stones down on any Pict who dared to climb up after them. The Cimmerians turned without losing pace and ran for the escarpment. When they reached it, the women took running leaps to begin scaling the face. Lyr knew that his legs would not be able to manage the same feat, so he began his climb from the ground. As he searched for handholds and crooks to place his feet, Lyr risked a glance over his shoulder. The Picts were little more than 100 feet away and would be upon him quickly. He became less choosy in his footholds and hand grips. He was now almost 30 feet above them, and the women had reached the crown of the rise. From above him, they hurled rocks at the Picts. One of the men went down, clutching his eye. Yet more Picts were coming. Lyr could see now that a mob of Picts, perhaps 30 or so, were closing in. He continued his frantic climb. An arrow clattered near his hands. He tried to ignore it. Above him he could see Deirdre's face, sweat-streaked and flush from the climb, screaming his name. Yet sound and light were beginning to change. The sounds of the voices and battle seemed muted, and the bright daylight seemed to dim. He sensed a change in the world that he could not name save for a single word: sorcery. The condors he had seen earlier began to strafe him. With their sharp beaks and claws they pulled at him. He ducked his head to protect his eyes and climbed by instinct. He felt one of the birds try to bite at his hand, but an arrow from Deirdre, or her archers, took it to its death before it could bite. His climb was slowed. He resolved himself to the fate that he might not make the top. Now from the top of the hill he heard more voices. Brion and the Cimmerians had come running to the aid of their chieftainess. Now javelins and hand axes flew from the top of the hill towards the bottom, and also from the bottom towards the top. Between the exchange of hurled missiles, Lyr painfully climbed. He felt Deirdre's hands clasp his when they failed to grip the firm ground. Lyr met her gaze and saw she would pull and remain exposed to danger. Perhaps it was a resolution born simply of his loyalty to her, or perhaps she truly cared for him as a friend. Either way, and no matter how much he wished for more, he could not let her expose herself to such danger. "Get her back!" Lyr yelled to the archer woman that had accompanied him. They pulled on her shoulders, but Deirdre would not let go. Lyr felt his feet slipping. If he fell, he would take the chieftainess with him. "I love you, Deirdre, but let go!" he yelled. Her expression changed from one of striving to one of dread. Whether she was offended by his admission or not, he would never know. For when she would not loose her grip, fate acted upon him instead. A javelin went through the tip of his shoulder and exited the front of his body. It pierced the flesh above the bones, and was held in place by Lyr's skin and clothing. The wicked bone barb nearly pricked Deirdre as well. She flinched, and instinct made her release him. Her fellow battlemates pulled her away from the edge, and she shouted at them to desist, but they would not heed her. Lyr felt that he was done for then. A pair of strong hands grabbed him about the wrists. He cried out in pain as they cinched their hold to be sure they had him. Brion had brought his personal guards with him to rescue his wife. A line of tall and linked shields gave the chieftain cover and blocked his actions from the sight of the Picts and the Cimmerians that were behind him. Rion held Lyr fast, and Lyr thought he was saved. Then Rion leaned forward and hissed, "You have no place in my dun." Then the chieftain of the stags pushed Lyr away from the rise.